Ladies and gentlemen, it's my very great pleasure to welcome all the way from Melbourne, Amanda. Amanda's going to give you a little bit about her background and introduce herself and what her presentation is all about. And I've been looking forward to this all week. Please welcome Amanda.
Thanks, Mike. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to quickly introduce myself. My profession is injury management and return to work. I've worked in a few different sectors, the private sector, public, aged care, so I'm quite savvy on workers' compensation claims. So my discussion today is going to be around the claims lodgement at the insurer and where you as the private investigator fits into it. Okay, so I'll start off with why a claim is lodged. So the reason why a claim is lodged is when a worker injures themselves in the workplace. They go to the employer, their manager, or their return to work coordinator. Mostly the manager, though, to just tell them that they've injured themselves or had a sprain. This gets lodged onto the incident reporting system. So each company has a different system that they use. The next step would be the manager would tell the worker to go off to either the company's provider, which is the medical center that they organize for workers to go to, where they get free medical treatment, which is 4 doctor's treatments and 4 physio treatments. They also have a decision to go to their own GP. The majority of the workers do that because their GPs know them pretty well. But the downside about that is that their GP does not have the experience where workers' compensation injuries are concerned. So therefore, most employers would prefer that the worker goes to their preferred provider because the GPs there are well clued up with these sort of injuries. So when they go to the doctor will determine how extensive the injury is. So if it's just a strain or a sprain, they might tell the worker to go back to work on light duties. On the certificate, they would state what duties it would be, the restrictions, how heavy they're lifting, and what they've got to do. If it's, for instance, say a truck driver or a tram driver, their duties wouldn't be part of driving because they would hypothetically have probably sprained their back. So the employer would put them into the office area to do light duties. Sometimes the worker wouldn't lodge a claim straight away because the employer would have a system, which means that the worker would be looked after within the company before the worker decides to lodge a claim. So this happens is because the employer has they've got to pay their what's the word? I forgot now. Sorry, their first 10 days of time lost, which is part of their sorry, I forgot the word now. And the workers' medical expenses, which is around about $770. So once that goes over the amount and the 10 days, that's when the employer would speak to the worker and say, okay, are you going to lodge a claim? So it depends on the worker whether he wants to or not. So with the type of injuries that usually happens is more around back injuries, strains, depending on the employer, the company, I should say. If it's a manufacturer, Maybe someone would get their hand stuck in a machine. If it's lifting a box or sewing something like a sawmill, or the floor might be wet and you slip and trip. Okay. So with the incident reports that I mentioned before, that is actually quite important where the injury, when the injury happened. This shows that there was a notification for the injury to begin with, and it's suggested by WorkSafe that large and small companies have to do that. I know with some companies, they get lazy to do that because their thing would be, oh, we don't have time, we'll do it tomorrow. Then when the claim is lodged, that's the first thing the work cover agent would ask for is the claim forms, the certificates, and also the injury notification. What doctors usually do is when the worker goes to visit them with an injury, they usually give a doctor certificate. So this doctor certificate would be provided when the worker has time lost and it goes on sick leave. So the worker will get paid sick leave, so he has 1 or 2 to 3 weeks off and finds out that his or her sick leave has run out. This is when the worker will decide, okay, now I think it's time that I should lodge a claim. So the claim might take 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, maybe longer till the worker puts in the claim. So once the claim is lodged, the doctor then has to convert the sick certificate into a work cover certificate. This will provide the worker to, when the claim is lodged, to have, if it's accepted, to have their sick leave reinstated to them, and their time lost goes on to work cover. So as I mentioned before, the employer liability is 10 days and $777 or $76. So with the work cover certificate, the first initial certificate is 14 days. So you might have noticed that in your request for a report, right? So if you see that it's the first 14 days of the medical certificate, that certificate does not have to be signed by the worker because it's the initial certificate. So who signs the certificate? It's the general practitioner that the worker saw. It's the surgeon that the worker went to in case they have a really bad injury and they have to go to hospital. The other one is a psychiatrist when the worker has a mental injury, which is stress from work, harassment, that sort of thing. So those 3 people can sign a certificate. So don't forget that if it's the initial certificate, it's 14 days. After that certificate, it's a subsequent certificate, which has to be 28 days thereafter for each certificate. So that certificate, each certificate, 28-day certificate, has to be signed by the worker. So if you notice that it's not signed, the agent or the employer should have told the worker to sign the certificate. The only extreme certificates are up to 3 months when the worker has had a significant injury, which means they could have had a car accident, they could have been had a really bad accident at work, and they in hospital or they're at home and they have no way of getting to the doctor. So that's where they get 3 monthly certificates signed by the doctor and authorized by the agent. Okay. Well, let me see. Sorry. So the time frames, because I know I was asked about time frames for lodgement and how many days you guys have to for the claims to be accepted. So in Victoria, the employer has, once they get the claim form, they have 10 days to lodge the claim to the agent. They investigate the claim for 28 days. So with the 28 days, it depends on when the agent gets an IME for the worker to go and see the doctor, okay? So say, for instance, they get the claim today. They've got 10 working days from today to lodge the claim. So within that the 28 days, they have to get an IME, which is an independent medical examination for each worker. So depending on when that examination is, that is when they would request a report from you guys, okay? So the report sometimes would be 14 days, which is, I think, the maximum time. But if the medical examination is quicker than what it's supposed to be, they will ask for a shorter time. The reason being for that is that when the IME is supposed to be done, they prefer the report that you get to be given to the IME to read through. This is because the IME can get your version of what you've reported from your investigation and your statements, and the IME will go by what his examination is of the worker. So he would read that before he does his examination. Sometimes when your reports are a bit late, it would go to the IME as a sub-report, okay? So this is where the two coincide with each other, and this is why they ask for an IME and an independent investigation. It's basically to determine whether the worker is genuine in his claim or not, okay? So with work cover claims, when the claim is submitted to the agent, it's mostly because the employer does not believe the fact that the worker has actually injured themselves. This is either that they've done it at work and there was no witnesses, or they've had someone whisper to them that they've played footy or they've played netball on the weekend and they heard that the worker has injured themselves on the weekend. So, and then the worker would come to work and say, oh, my shoulder's hurting, my back's hurting, I did it while I was lifting something today, okay? So this is why there's investigations requested for this sort of thing. So when you get a work cover claim form and you get a request from the agent, there's three things you need to look at. That's basically the worker's personal information, which is you got to make sure that all details are correct. Okay, so you basically, when you get a medical certificate, you look on the medical certificate to make sure that the address is correct. And also they would have, hopefully they should have an injury date on the medical certificate, which would coincide with the claim form and the date on the claim form, okay? So there would be, so on the worker's claim form, they would have, what would they have? Their phone number, date of injury, either return to work date, a cease date. So if they have a cease date, what I used to do is with the claim form is send a return to work plan as well, so that whomever is looking at the claim will know, okay, the worker is back at work and they are doing modified duties. All right. So with the incident and work cover injury details, you got to make sure that all the details are the same as I just said before, the claim form and the medical certificate. Make sure the injury dates are correct and what happened with what happened and where, which means the injury, they've sprained their shoulder or they've hurt their arm, they've got tennis elbow. What did they do with regards to that injury? Did they do a lot of typing? Were they reaching up to find something? I've had a worker that had a knock on their head because they reached up on the shelf and a motorbike helmet fell on their head, just stuff like that. So it actually sprained their neck a little bit and they had to go and get physio. Also check, which is important, if there are witnesses. If there's no witnesses, then you are guaranteed that the employer is going to ask for it to be investigated. With the workers' information details on the claim, make sure that the company details are on there. A return to work coordinator and manager details, as well as their occupation. By their occupation, you can sort of determine what sort of jobs they do and where the injury comes from, okay? So claims information received from the agent must have employee claim form, medical certificates, and most importantly, the incident reports. I know a lot of companies will provide that, some won't. So for request of circumstance investigation, like I explained before, there's times that a claim would or wouldn't be genuine, okay? So it's up to the employer to decide whether they want the claim accepted or rejected. Most companies that I've worked for, their claims were mostly stress claims, and basically because either the company was doing a restructure and there was a lot of harassment as well. So in that case where there's harassment involved in a claim, I can tell you now that will definitely be rejected by the agent because that's not part of an injury. It's a situation at work, okay? So how you come into the whole situation is that the agent will go through WorkSafe, and the agent will ask for a specific investigative a company that they prefer to work with them, and that's where the private investigator comes in for a circumstance investigation report. So in my days, we used to call it a circs report. This is to determine liability of whether the injury is in fact real or if it's happened at home. Because we're working from home now the majority of the time as well, it's basically hard to determine how injuries happen because there's no one to see the accident. There won't be any witnesses either. So the most injuries that you would see would be factory workers and mechanics, drivers, truck drivers. I worked for Yarra Tram, so the tram drivers, okay? Then there's aged care, the nurses. They've got to be out there working. So basically, you have to determine whether this is an injury or not at work, okay? So the other factors of employment would be outside of activities, like I said, like sports. Sometimes workers would sprain their ankles, you know, because they've fallen. So that's where all this comes from. What else? So what happens is when you put in your report, And after the decision is made, after the decision is made, the insurer, the agent, would actually read the report and the IME's report and make a decision whether they're going to accept it or not. Okay, so therefore it's very important to have all your information and all your ducks in a row. So if the claim hypothetically is rejected based on the information that you've given, and also what the IME said, that here they don't believe that it's work-related, the worker can go and put in an application for conciliation. I know this is not part of your what you do, but I'll just quickly go through it. Conciliation is where the worker goes and put their case through to determine whether their claim will be reinstated and looked at again. For this to happen, they might ask for another report, maybe a sub-report from the IME, maybe from you guys. I've not seen it from you guys. I've seen it more from the IME perspective, and they will make a decision as to whether the claim is related or not. 9 times out of 10, the decision is maintained to be rejected, and the worker is not happy about that. What else? So with the so just quickly, let me just go through the timeframes again. The timeframes in different states are actually quite different. So in Victoria, we have 28 days to investigate the claim. In Queensland, you have 14 to 30 business days. In Tasmania, Adelaide, New South Wales, and Western Australia, you have also 14 to 30 days. In the Northern Territory, we have 10 days to make a decision, and in the ACT, also 28 days. So as you can see, the states in Australia has different rules and regulations where work cover is concerned. It's a bit tricky because you got to know the legislation in each state. So I've worked with companies in Victoria, Queensland, Tasmania, and New South Wales, and it gets a bit tricky because you got to know each legislation for each one. What else? I've already spoken about the agent's decision. So just to touch on what Paul said yesterday as well, that when you go into an investigation interview, I've dealt with a few of it myself because I've been the one that was questioned with the companies that I've worked for. So I found that some investigators from different companies weren't very accommodating. So I think it's very important for the person that is doing the interview to be very compassionate regarding the person they are talking to. Whether they believe that the person is telling the truth or not, it's not for us to determine whether they are rotting the system or not. So it's important for the person to feel comfortable when they talk. And I know that I've had a few people that they've asked me to come with them. They were actually quite distraught, and it's very important to be able to communicate with them and to make sure that they are comfortable in talking to you, and especially those who are claiming stress. They are very emotional, and some of them won't really sit and listen to you. So I think patience patience is the key. What else? So in some cases that I've also came across is that some investigators aren't really, some of them are prepared, very well prepared, and some weren't, and that was a bit of a shame because it sort of upset the worker who is going on stress. But it's important for you to understand the process of how an investigation comes about. So, yeah, I hope you have if you have any questions for me.
I've got a lot of questions, Amanda. Can you give us an example, please, Amanda, of a successful rehabilitation that you were involved with? You don't have to name the workplace, but just the injury, the person, and just one example, please.
Okay, so I've had a worker who, because I've worked in different companies, I've had a worker who had a lot of stress in the company. It was can I mention the name?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, just so they can get
perspective. Yeah.
Okay, so I work for CFA, and CFA has a lot of traumatic experiences. And one worker, he was an ambulance, not an ambulance, sorry. He had to go and rush to a accident scene. And this person was flown out of the car, and the car actually blew up. And when he got there, he realized that it was his best friend that was in this accident. This guy actually passed away on the site. Okay, so he went off work on stress, and it was actually quite heartbreaking just to see him. So when I started working there, he was off for like, God, months because he didn't want to come back to work. And when I started talking to him like once a week to just reiterate, you know, we miss you, we'd like you to come back to work, you know, everybody's here to support you, and stuff like that. So further into it, I managed to speak to him and his manager to get him back to work. I ended up getting him back to work 2 days a week, 3 hours a day. And I explained to him the reason why I've done it is because it will be mentally supportive of him, like in his mind, that there are people and that he's not stuck at home thinking about what's happened, you know, and that he's there where he gets support. And he actually became a little bit better because he was at work. So he actually came to me after and he said, oh, can I increase my hours? So we increased his hours, still 2 days, but 3 to 4 hours a day, you know. So to me, that was a plus because he came to work. And it's important that I also stress to people too, it's how you speak to the people and how you are.
Okay. All right. Now, as a return to work person,
yep,
you'll get emerging issues that didn't exist 5 years ago that suddenly they come through now. So something like scoliosis with a fake stone, the dust from that causing people to have lung issues and health issues.
Yep.
How do you prepare for that? Is there training or is there sort of like an alert in your role? How do they sort of cotton on? Do they see developments from statistics? How does it work?
No, they don't. Well, usually they would have to provide details before they start work anyway, what's going on with them. Right. So what happens is where they have to notify the employer as to their situation. So in that case, that's where I come in, and we will work together with the worker and say, look, this is your situation. Where can we help you? Okay. Then we'll talk to the doctor and say, okay, so this is the person's situation. How can we work with him so that he stays at work?
Yep. Okay. No, that's great. All right. So you're actually an investigator now?
Yes.
and you're doing stress claims, psychological injury, or
yes.
Mostly psychological injury?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. And are you going out at the moment, or is this limited to on the phone currently in Victoria?
It's online.
Or online. Okay. All right.
Online.
Okay. So your employer provides a system for that?
Yes. So those who don't have like face-to-face, I will do that on the phone. And they're actually quite accommodating to that as well. So yeah, right. So since COVID started, I've not been in the workplace.
Okay. Can you give me an example of, okay, that was a really great example with the best friends. So a person that didn't go back to work and an injury, can you give us an example of one of those just from the past that you can remember offhand? It just comes to mind.
Okay, so I've had a worker who had an injury to his back. And this is going back a few years now. He injured his back at work. He was driving a truck and he sprained his back because the trucks are high, you know, the steps. He had to go in and out, in and out, in and out. And because of that, he sprained his back. He got to a point where he could not sit up. And we tried to get him back to work so many times already. So at one point, I got him back to work and he was at work. And we had to get him a bed to lie on. So he would sit for like 10 minutes and then he goes, oh, I can't sit now, I've got to lie down. So in the end, we said, look, it's pointless him coming to work because he's not working, he's lying on his back.
Yeah, okay.
So in that point, we just put him on full work cover and we let him stay at home because there was nothing we could do.
Okay. And in your role, have you ever been involved in that mediation you spoke about yourself, or you're apart from that?
The conciliation?
Yeah, conciliation.
Yes. Okay. I've been involved in that. I've been to quite a few of them. I've had a worker get really angry across the table and actually put his hands down and screamed at me and the agent because we weren't basically listening to him. But it wasn't the fact that we're not listening to him. It's just that the injury was it did not happen at work and it wasn't, you know, work related. And he didn't want to understand that. So they maintained the decision and he got angry at us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, some people just don't want to hear what the rules are, understand that.
They don't.
Okay. All right. And so your qualifications, I'm sorry, your actual qualifications?
Qualifications?
Yeah, that you hold?
I've got a certificate in frontline management.
Right.
Also investigations.
Yep.
And training and assessment, but I've got to update that.
That's okay. That's all right.
Yeah.
Might be able to help you with that in the future.
Oh, okay.
This sort of things really help with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So hang on for a while. But in relation to the rehabilitations, somewhere like CFA.
Yeah.
Right. Just not picking on them. Okay.
Yeah.
They would have 4 or 5 people in your role, or 2 or 3, or
no. Actually, when I was working there, because they have the volunteer section as well, plus they have workers' compensation. I was the only one doing workers' compensation, and there was 4 people doing the volunteer section.
Wow! Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Lots of work.
And number of employees, if you can remember offhand?
There was more than 2,000, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a big organisation.
Yep, it is.
Very, very big. Yeah, look, the reason I asked you about the trending developments in injuries is we've noticed in Tasmania with that scoliosis thing and the fake stone that people are using in kitchens has really sort of become a probably bigger investigation trend now, more than stress.
Yep.
Down there.
Yep.
And there are 3 levels, I think, of governance of it. It's not just workers' compensation. There's something else that's industry related and something else. And it's really hard to get a clear rule in a timely manner in Tasmania. And one of the investigators down there, he's interacting with the employer who he represents, and he goes to the stonemason place and he's dressed in his jeans and no tie and, you know, a normal shirt, because when you go to factories and stuff, that's what you do. But if you go into boardrooms, you look like this and like you do. But, you know, he couldn't get these people to understand just how important it was for them to cooperate with him and provide the information. So did you ever have difficulties in getting information out of people in relation to injuries and stuff like that?
No.
Out of organisations, sorry, not people, organisations.
No. See, my thing is, like, when I start with a company, like, I usually get to know the person that I'm involved with at work, okay? I think it's very important to not make friends, but make contacts, because it's easier for them to help you after. Because when I first started out and I didn't know how the process worked, it was very hard for me. But then I learned along the way that you got to get to know them first for them to help you. And that's what I've done after that. So for me, it was easy. Even with workers, when I started off with a new company, at first they don't want to talk to me, but then they like me afterwards. I don't know if it's because of my personality or what, but they'll then be very happy to hear from me. So when I call them up, it's, "Hi, Amanda," you know. So in that sense, I get it easy.
Yeah, it's developing that rapport.
That's right.
This is what's disappointed me about your observation, where you saw the investigators coming to your workplace and they didn't communicate very well, or they were highly suspicious and arrogant. I do not want any of my investigators out there acting like that. I want them to be empathetic, I want them to be thorough, and I want them to be professional. And if they can't do that, they should go and do fraud investigations for the fraud department somewhere and treat people like that. This is about a basic right from the workplace that they have.
That's right.
And if their involvement is proven, and we're there to find the facts, not to deny claims. And anyone acting like that should not be doing it. There is no reason to be doing that. So I'm really pleased that you saw that observation. I'm really pleased that you're now an investigator and you can fix one of those issues, because you won't act like that.
No.
And I'm just disappointed that should still be happening. There are remedies for it, and I'm working with some organisations, both government, local and state, in relation to it. And we're looking at improvements, and you're part of that improvement role with what you've done today.
Thank you.
And keep in mind, for the training and assessment that you're looking at, this is evidence of what you've done today. I'll send you the recording.
Okay.
This is evidence of your training, not assessment, but your training. Okay. So keep that in mind. All right. So Amanda, thank you very much for coming in today. I really appreciate you giving up your time. Looking forward to next time.
Okay.
And looking forward to catching up again. It's been how long? 18 months.
Yeah.
Over a year, it has been.
Yeah.
Wow. That's gone quick. All right then, Amanda. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Bye.